Hey, this is Eddie Trager of Take and Take, and you are listening to Music Existence.
Joining me today is Eddie Trager of the quintet of sorts, Take and Take. Welcome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, that's the funny thing I'll start off with. I was checking out your Spotify, your cover art, and I thought initially that Take and Take was a quintet, but then I saw it was just you spread across five different roles. So, I guess I want to start off by heading immediately into your upbringing. Was music immediately accessible to you so that you were able to teach yourself those instruments in kind of um, a fast through like a fast means?
Um, sort, sort of, yeah. Music was always sort of like part of life. I always wanted to play drums, and that's kind of what was my main instrument for most of my life. But my mom made me learn she's like, you have to try piano before you can learn to play drums, because who as a parent do you want
Piano
your kid
sets
playing
the
drums?
foundation, right? You can see it
Yeah,
behind me.
yeah, yeah. So piano does set the foundation. So I did do it like for a few months, like 3 or 6 months, but I still wanted to play drums. So then I just went straight to drums after that. And then uh yeah, like in high school is when I started playing guitar. Because my brother studied guitar. Um, and then I just thought it was cool, so I always played his guitars. Um, and that's kind of, and then when I went to college, I ended up taking like 2 years of piano, but like my keyboard playing is not good. Um, it's not good. I can like make chords and stuff, but it's not really that good. Um, so yeah, but I did a music degree, and so that's enough to get me by on a recording, I guess, to for the key to write the keyboards anyway. Um, so yeah, my most trained instrument is drums and percussion. Um, it's like my real trained instrument. And then guitar and bass, I just kind of taught myself and learned from the guitarists in my bands and stuff. Um, yeah,
So you were part of a member of different bands before starting this solo endeavor?
yeah, yeah. So I had like a high school band, and a couple college bands, and I was in the band Necrogoblicon for a long time on drums. And the first band I played guitar in was a band called the Wailing Coast, which is based in China still, because I lived out there. Um, so yeah, doing that project on guitar was like very I guess encouraging to me that I could actually do like like, oh, I can play guitar in a band live and it's okay. Like I can actually do this metal album that's been sitting around for a long time. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
And it's cool that you mentioned China because, I mean, it mentions COVID in your Spotify bio, lockdown in Xiamen. And,
Mhm.
uh, and I was thinking back to China, and when I was growing up, I listened to Tang Dynasty, who are like the premier Chinese metal band, in the 90s. And
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of that band, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and Chongqu, Spring and Autumn, that Kaiser Kuo from Tang Dynasty was in. And,
Uh,
China has always had a rich history and a rich relationship with metal. The Beijing MIDI Music School, they love metal. It's like in their veins.
yeah, yeah. The Yeah, there's good stuff coming out of China. I mean, here, like in the US, we just like don't really get much of it. But there's some good stuff out there. I heard that band O that
Hmm.
just released a single. They're from Beijing.
Yeah,
Really,
Beijing is like the
really
main
cool.
hub.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think before COVID, it was more of a main hub. I think COVID kind of messed up the whole deal.
Wuhan, in particular, was big on punk, you know?
Hmm. Oh, wow. See,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't even know. I never went to Wuhan, so I
yeah.
don't.
You know, ironic that everything just went to shit, and it caused a lot of. I remember um, I was ordering a CD from China. You know, once COVID was spreading in March, and I was so afraid that when I actually get the CD, that it'll stay on the CD. But thankfully, it was in good shape, and
Yeah,
I'm
good.
alive.
Yeah,
You started this project, Take and Take, in 2016. You were
yeah,
traveling through the jungles of Antioquia in Colombia. And what led you there to Colombia?
yeah. So I ended up in Colombia because when I got kicked from Necro, um, I was in Puerto Rico, like I was just on vacation,
Yeah,
and then like we were supposed to have. I mean, in the schedule that I had was like in a few months I would go back to the U.S. Go come back to California. I guess Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. Go back to California, practice a month or two, and go
yeah.
back on tour. But I didn't have anything to go back to. And it was like, well, Colombia is a cheap ticket. I'm just going to go there. I'm just going to, because I had wanted to travel for like a long time.
Yeah.
And touring was cool and it allowed me to travel and like see places, but like way too short, like you're in a spot for a day.
Yeah, all you have is like a stage and a hotel room, and that's it.
Yeah, a stage in a hotel room and just like the travel, especially, yeah. I mean, it's just so fast. Everything passes by so quickly. Um, so it was great and not great to travel that way. Um, so I was like, I just took the chance. I was like 29, I guess, or I was 28 still. And, you know, I just took that. I was like, okay, like I want to go travel. This is the time. I have nothing tying me down. Like I just got paid from a tour. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
better take advantage of your resources.
Yeah. So, and then I did the whole like, I just did it super cheap. I ended up staying in Colombia for like a year, over a year. And I wrote some music and I just had my laptop and wrote stuff in MIDI and stuff and played acoustic guitar.
Did you pick up Spanish to like navigate, or did you know um, lots of
Yeah.
the foundational communication beforehand?
Um, my Spanish was bad when I got
Yeah,
there. Yeah. We have Spanish education here, but it's just like if you're not immersed, it's not good.
yeah.
You're just not going to speak it. So that's kind of where I was. Like I knew how to say like milk and street and
All the
where's the bathroom.
Duolingo classic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I learned Spanish. That was awesome. Really like doing that. Learning language is fun. So yeah.
And that's cool. And I'd like to read the description of Take and Take in Spotify because it really resonated with me.
Oh, cool.
Uh, Take and Take is the sound of personal struggle and awakening, of greed and gain, of telling lies and being lied to, of deep disappointment and personal loss, the rise of ego and the inevitable fall. It is also a triumph, a grand fuck you to the world shouted with abandon, a poetic testament to the power of heavy music. And that's really thoughtful especially to be that vulnerable and realize your vulnerabilities, realize your faults, kind of your shortcomings, and
Yeah.
also how you improve. I mean, when did you kind of become more aware of that and mature in that way?
Yeah, I think just like throughout like the travels and dealing with like the old band, um and like cuz I loved being in Necrogoblicon, you know. That was like I loved it. It was awesome. But, you know, me and certain members didn't get along and like
So
I
the
got hurt.
egos kind of took over, right?
Yeah. A whole bunch of like Leo personalities all in one band. Someone's going to get pissed off, you know. Like
Yeah.
um but I mean, you know, I just learned like, you know, I was hurt, but I also realized came to the realization that like, you know, there's two sides to everything and I'm not a perfect person either. Um but yeah, just like just traveling and thinking about the past and kind of losing like what I thought were close friends um
You're
and
like
like
reflecting in the same way.
yeah, yeah, just reflecting in that way, just kind of, and you know, getting older now. I'm in like my 30s and stuff, so it just with time it came that way. And then the way this album came about, it's like such a long period of time for like this music to, like, I wrote some of it in 2016, right? Like
Yeah.
it just sat there and I couldn't play it, you know. I wasn't good enough at guitar to play the guitar parts that I wrote. And I didn't have any lyrics for like
Yeah.
years, you know. I didn't have anything to say. I was just like, I only had the notes. So it just was a lot of,
Just blueprints for the time being.
yeah, yeah, just kind of like I knew I wanted to do something, but I just didn't know how to do it, and it just took time, and it became sort of like a journey in that way. Yeah, I guess.
That's awesome, man. I mean, and I'm glad you kind of learned a lot in that process. And you mentioned in your previous band, you look at it with fondness. Do you still kind of carry those memories with you into this solo project, or do you kind of cringe sometimes when you look back?
Well, a lot of it was like part of this first part of the lyrics of these songs are a reflection of like my feelings, because that was like the longest thing I had done in my life, you know. I never had a relationship that lasted that long,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when it ended, it was like, oh my god, like this was my
You,
whole
you,
life
you kind
before
of
this.
lose track of who you are. You have to pick yourself back together again. You have to retrace your steps. You have to relearn how to communicate.
Yeah, so like there was definitely good times, but it got like really sour. And I had like not good feelings, and I still like don't really have great feelings towards that whole situation. But
So this is a clean slate for you in a way.
yeah, this is kind of like, okay, I need to do something that's me, that's mine, that is for me, that's not worried about anything else. Sort of like a cathartic act, a cleansing act in a way. um and just like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
just for me. I wanted to do it because I had to, because I felt like I was going crazy if I didn't. So
Hmm.
yeah.
So sort of bolstering this product, you have two different guys in two different areas of the world. You have Matt Bales in Red Room in Seattle who handles mixing. And
Yeah.
what's one thing that surprised you about his technique?
Well, Matt's like, I mean, Matt's absolutely awesome. Like I learned so much from him. just from he kindly allowed me to like be there while mixing.
Kind of
Uh,
broke ground in a way in terms of your thought process, right?
like, well, I had done the whole thing, and I was going to try to mix it,
On
and then
your
I got
own?
on my own
Oh shit.
because that's something I do,
Right.
as a hobby up until now. Like right now, I feel like I can mix something and it will be good. But when I was doing the album, it like just wasn't good enough. And I don't know if I would even now do like this album. I wouldn't. It's too hard for me. Um, but he kindly allowed me to like sit in, and we would do notes every day, and he would mix a couple songs, and then I'd go in the next day, new notes, and like learned so much from Matt. But he's like kind of an old school guy. He came up in like some studios and like did he was like the assistant engineer on like Pearl Jam records or
Oh,
something.
is he like a tape guy, like analog? Just
Yeah, like came from that world. And like one of my favorite albums ever of all time, that's like one of the most influential albums for me, was like the early Mastodon albums,
yeah.
right? So like the first two especially, Remission and Leviathan, and those were all him. You know, he engineered, he recorded those albums, he mixed them, and
You
he did
must
it.
have been like kind of starstruck almost.
Yeah, well, I was like, oh man, this guy's like,
This guy's legit.
I mean, he's so legit, right? He's done stuff that I like respect so much, and I chose Matt because
So you
I
reached
actually
out to him, right?
I reached out to him. I did reach out to someone else who I really really love like the work they'd done, but and we did a couple test mixes or a test mix from each of them. But I went with Matt because something that
The
he
bond
does.
was like a little bit more solid, would you say?
Yeah. I just went with him because I liked his initial mix slightly more, like right off the bat. And then he also has a certain knack for finding like a uniqueness within a band, I feel like.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's nothing that's cookie cutter about the way he does anything. I mean, he has his certain processes, but he's something about what Matt does captures a certain essence. So um I didn't even give him reference mixes. He was like give me reference mixes if you
That's
want.
dedication. That's trust, man.
Yeah, I know. And I was really I kind of doubted myself, like, oh man, was that the right decision, like to not give him mixes? Because halfway through I'm like, oh my god, is it gonna be good? Like,
Your face just kind of turns
I'm like
white.
I'm like
Yeah.
well, because it's like such a personal project. Like it's like so my baby, right? Like I have no ability to be calm about anything, because every single note matters, right? Like the way I've crafted this thing over 8 years or whatever, like it's like too personal. Like can't divest myself. I can't think logically. It's all like too tied up in emotion. um but uh going back to like finding that unique sound, he's just so good at that. I didn't give him any reference mixes, and he's just like, if you want to give me them, like you got to give me them like in the first few days, or else like we're already on the way and we're mixing the record the way we're mixing it. And so um but I'm really happy I didn't, and he came out with a awesome sound that I'm super happy with.
How about the mastering process? What was that like for you personally? How did that affect you?
Yeah, the mastering process, I was went with Jens Bogren,
Yeah, yeah.
um, who
Swedish.
basically the Swedish guy, who is the absolute best, right, at his craft. Um,
Big time.
Everyone goes to him, and I just loved all the stuff that he done, and I didn't even like. Jens has like at the same time he was doing my master, he was doing like I don't know, other big massive projects. So I didn't really like
Oh,
talk to
he
him.
must have been fucking busy.
Yeah, yeah, he was super busy. I only so we only communicated through email. Um, but he was
I mean,
also
that's still
like,
all right,
yeah, it's
right?
fine. It's great. Like, um, he's a pro, and Tony, who's the main mastering engineer, who also handles some of the like sequencing and stuff for Yen when Jens does a mastering project, is also like one of the the best mastering
The
engineers in the
big
world.
dogs, right?
Like those guys rule. Like they do massive projects, right? But they were super kind, super helpful. They really paid a lot of attention to detail, and they are they are who they are because of the way they do things, and they do it right. So,
And they
um,
probably went through similar trajectories as you to be where they are.
yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah. I don't know specifically about their how they came up, but I just know like I think my old band even talked to Jens about a master way back. But like he's been on my radar for a long time. But yeah, they've definitely got bigger and bigger clients over the last over the years.
Hmm.
But I was really happy to work with Jens on the master, and I had Tony work on a different project of mine. They're both amazing as mastering engineers. So good.
Nice.
Yeah.
The two singles that you have um, that lead into your debut album uh, are Sticky and That
Mhm.
Won't Last. And I like how each one has different characteristics. Um, you have That Won't Last, which is kind of very involved, and I like how the leads don't like jump out at you and like distract you and like all screamy and like distracting. I like how they just kind of sit in the mix nicely. They like supplement it.
Nice. Yeah, I was happy with that one for sure. And the leads are kind of like they kind of go over like vocals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just ended up doing there's a bunch of leads on that song, which usually is not really. I think of myself more as a rhythm guy, but
Because you know when you're working with leads, you risk them kind of clashing and cluttering and all that. But
yeah,
the way they're kind of the way they work together with the other aspects of the instrumentation is really good.
nice. Thank you. That's awesome to hear. I mean, that's a Matt and Jens compliment to how good they are, because there's definitely a bunch of layers all in there. I could not have done it. Could not have done it. Make it sound as clean as it does. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. It's nice to hear. Thanks.
And the other song that you have is more, it's slower, it's sludgier, it's more Sabbath kind of influence. And when you think of the title of your your album, where do these songs kind of fit in relation to it?
Interesting. Yeah. So sticky refers to like a lot of the songs kind of refer to the same sort of thing, like, or are an experience that is disillusioning, right? Um, and like sticky refers to like being stuck on something. Like I'm sticky. I can't unstick myself
Yeah.
from like certain feelings or certain like thoughts, like they're just stuck to me, or I'm stuck to it, whichever way you know you want to see it. And if you get too stuck on something, you like lose perspective, I guess.
Yeah,
So
like when you have like girls that you love so much that means like that are near and dear to your heart, and like they just, they occupy your mind so much that it's like, yeah, you lose track, and like, oh man, you lose track when you have these like desires that are unmet, even if it's just like separate from romance, even if it's like a goal that you're too
Yeah,
hung up on.
yeah, a goal or like some philosophical idea or whatever it may be.
What
Yeah.
does this mean? You know,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Um, so that's like um that's what's sticky. For that won't last. That won't last is kind of like a double meaning, like in the sense it's like telling yourself like nothing lasts. Like it's gonna whatever like pain you're having is going to go away.
I see. So
Um,
it's like, so in the positive sense, it's like you better enjoy this while you can because that won't last. But, you know, when it comes to the negative connotation, it's like the catastrophic thing. For example, you know, the lockdowns brought on by COVID, they didn't last. That's a bad thing that kind of ran its course eventually.
right. And so it can be good and bad, right? Because good things run their course and bad things run their, things that you like run their course and things that you don't like run their course. And just even some of the, it's kind of it means that, but it also means like sometimes I'm saying it as a direct response to the lyric I just said before,
All
or
right.
it's like I'm having all these thoughts and it's like, oh, that won't last. Or like,
Oh, like so, for instance, like when you're cluttered, right? When you experience
hmm,
clutter in your mind.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. That's a good example. And so like a lot of these songs are kind of like doing that. There's a bit of there can be you can be take certain lyrics in multiple ways,
Right.
or from multiple perspectives. So yeah.
And in some of the references to your influences, you mentioned Macedon. There's also like, you know, I heard Opeth mention Mars Volta, Queen. Can definitely hear those. But then also the interesting one is Jacob Collier. And if
Mm.
you remember what Jacob Collier faced when he debuted, he was getting takedown after takedown. People hated him. Like they saw, it's like they sniped right through the fact that he was kind of multi-talented, and they're like, who is this fuck? You know, who is this guy? He's like full of himself. But then like I saw an interview that he did, and he said, yeah, I admit, like back when I debuted, I was full of myself, and now I've matured. And like just to see the growth that he's experienced, it kind of reminds me of what you face too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Jacob Collier is just like a musical genius, and like the good thing about him, one of the
He's
good things about
definitely like fine tuned his craft because when he started out, he was still trying to figure things out, but now he has such a grasp on what he wants to do.
yeah, he definitely like honed in on like what he enjoys about making music, I think, and like what he finds to be like the point, right?
Mhm.
uh I think he's like come to realize a lot of that, but he's always been so awesome. I mean, he's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, his personality definitely kind of big. It like kind of strikes you, it kind of overwhelms you, but once you like kind of bask in the sheer effort, the sheer strength, the
Yeah,
sheer kind of seasoning of what he's doing, he's very creative.
Yeah, he's extremely creative. And he has like an attitude that, I mean, I guess I would love to have. Like I'm
Like a
too,
zest for life, you know?
yeah, yeah, like I'm too cynical of a person. He's so positive, you know, about so much. Um at least that's what he puts out there. And I find it hard to like relate to people like that usually.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just not my experience with life to be like positive all the time. Um, but it is like uh I don't know, something about the way he does it. He's just a guy that you want to protect, you know? Like protect this guy at all costs, you know what I mean? Like let this guy do his thing
Because he
and let
definitely
everyone.
has his
Yeah.
vulnerabilities, and but he's learned just so much. He's learned to grow up essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he's awesome in the way he approaches music and like teaching about music and doing music and being free with music and like just about creativity in general. I really subscribe to his a lot of his ideas about like creativity and freeness and freedom
Mm-hmm.
and like what's important when creating, you know.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. And similarly, from your perspective, considering the career you've had thus far musically, what have you learned about yourself, not only as a musician, but as a person?
Mm. Yeah. Ooh, that's a tough question. Um, I've learned a lot. I've come to be more accepting, both of other people and of myself, I would say. That's one of the things. Like, I'm a person who tends to like hold a grudge, you know? And I know that about myself, but I also know what I've learned is like that's not particularly like helpful to me
It
or
only
to
takes you so far, in other words.
yeah, or to anyone. So like if you're if I'm gonna be that way, like I gotta know that like what the toll is. You know, you have to be like aware of. I've learned to be aware of kind of myself, and it's like in the Matrix. It says "Know thyself" over the door. You know, like you just gotta realize what you're doing.
You gotta follow that
Sometimes,
white rabbit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so I think it's just sort of like more of a self awareness and I think traveling really put a lot of things, going to other countries and living in other
Oh, for
countries
sure.
really.
As cliche as it sounds, traveling does broaden the mind.
Yeah, I mean, because how are you gonna? I mean, there's just so much out there to experience, and like,
Even if it's just like going outside to like a park, you can get so much inspiration from that too. Seeing the
sure, yeah,
people, seeing animals, seeing dogs,
yeah,
it's really awesome.
yeah, and you can put if you're able to like realize, you know, that every single person in the entire universe has the same depth of experience as you do about every single thing. Like they do have that. Like everyone does. And so like I'm just I have my depth of story for myself, right? Like if I'm going to be a super narcissist about it, like I can tell my whole story about myself, right? Like it's all me. But that's the thing, like everyone's got their story, right? Like there's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
everyone has that like a certain depth of experience that you can think about because you have your own depth of experience, but you
yeah.
can never know
Hmm.
their experience. It's only up to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that answers the question, but
It does. It does. Wholeheartedly, it does, and
nice,
sincerely. And you
nice,
answered it well.
nice.
And lastly, anything you'd like to say to your fans?
Oh, if you are out there, I would love to hear from you. Just starting out here, I just hope that people who listen to it um, are able to connect with it in some way and hear it kind of like I hear it, um, and like really can get into it. I feel like the music on this album is music that you can really like dig into, you know. Um, I feel like you could listen to it really, really closely and a bunch of times and still have a good time. you know, it'll still be. I at least I hope um, that that's people's experience that it's music that they can sink their teeth into. Um, but yeah, um, I guess if that's you, let me know.